Hanse, I'm Kristin Achkite. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. Canada's Federal Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announced she is resigning from cabinet this morning after she released a detailed statement on social media. The resignation comes on the day Canada's Federal Finance Minister was expected to give the fall economic statement. In the statement, Freeland says on Friday the Prime Minister told her he no longer wanted her to serve as his finance minister and offered her another cabinet post. After careful reflection, Freeland says she concluded the only honest and viable path was for her to resign from cabinet. Freeland goes on to say that both her and the Prime Minister have found themselves at odds about the best path forward for Canada. Ministers reacted to the news as they gathered for a cabinet meeting this morning, some emotional.
Not just I wish her all the best. Look, these are difficult and deeply personal decisions, and obviously she's made that decision, and I respect her for it.
Freeland said she looks forward to continuing her work as an MP and wants to run again in the upcoming federal election. On top of this latest announcement, Federal Housing Minister Sean Fraser also made a resignation announcement Monday morning at a news conference in Ottawa ahead of a cabinet meeting and the fall economic statement.
The past 5 years has had me reflect on what I hope the next 5 years to look like. And I can tell you, more than anything else, I want to spend more time with my kids, and I hope my kids are going to want to spend more time with me. I want meals with Dad to be part of the family's routine as the rule, not just the exception when he's home from Ottawa.
There were questions around Fraser's next steps after his resignation, with some sources saying he was considering to run for Nova Scotia's provincial Liberal leadership. But Fraser says his decision to resign was purely personal. Operations at Canada Post will resume on Tuesday, December 17th, the company said after the Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered a return to work. Federal Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon directed the board to make the decision if it found the two sides could not come to a deal by the end of the year. The Labour Board has extended the union contracts through May to allow additional time for the bargaining process to unfold. In the meantime, Canada Post says it has agreed with the union to implement a 5% wage increase retroactive to the day after the collective agreements expired. The Postal Union said on Friday that McKinnon's intervention was part of a troubling pattern in which the government lets employers off the hook for bargaining in good faith with workers and their unions.
The transformational change to serve Canadians the way they want to be served in the future still needs to happen, and the only way we're going to get there is through negotiated settlements, but we're in that process now. But for today, our focus is on ensuring that we can welcome employees back tomorrow and in a safe and orderly fashion, and then begin up to restart the postal system so we can serve Canadians once again.
After 9 days, police have arrested a man they say was involved in a death on the White Bear First Nation in southeastern Saskatchewan earlier this month. Dwayne Maxey was wanted for 1 count of manslaughter after Carlisle RCMP were called to a home in White Bear First Nation on December 3rd. When RCMP arrived, they found the body of 33-year-old Talon Lone Thunder, who is from White Bear but living in Cornack. On December 7th, 22-year-old Jeremy White Bear, wanted for second-degree murder in connection to Lone Thunder's death, was found in a home in White Bear and arrested. On Thursday, December 12th, Maxey was found and arrested in Regina. Maxey was scheduled to appear in court in Estevan this morning. Meanwhile, the Saskatchewan Serious Incident Response Team is investigating this week after a man from White Bear First Nation appears to have died in RCMP custody. On Friday, December 13th at around 12:20 a.m., Carlisle RCMP received a report of an assault in a home on White Bear First Nation. 2 injured people were found inside. An adult male was taken to hospital with serious injuries. An adult female was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Officers then arrested a 49-year-old man from White Bear. They took him to the Carlisle detachment, and he was monitored by staff throughout the night. At around 9 a.m., an officer found the man in medical distress and began providing first aid until EMS arrived. He was later declared deceased by EMS and was not named. His family has been notified, and the Serious Incident Response Team is now investigating. A man in Manitoba has died following a shooting near the Ebb and Flow First Nation west of Winnipeg. On Sunday, December 15th at around 7:45 a.m., St. Rose RCMP responded to a report of a shooting on Highway 278 near Ebb and Flow. Both RCMP and EMS found a 34-year-old man on the ground beside a truck. He was taken to hospital in Dauphin but died from his injuries. RCMP later arrested a 53-year-old man in a home in Ebb and Flow. He was arrested without incident and remains in custody. No names have been released. Manitoba RCMP Major Crime Services is now investigating this week. The Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, or ACERT, have released their findings on the shooting of an Indigenous man from 2020. ACERT's mandate is to investigate potential misconduct in police and RCMP. Their report indicates that 51-year-old Barry Glenn Cardinal called 911 several times on September 20th in 2020 and asked the operator if they wanted a shootout. He asked the police to come with firearms and to take him out. Athabasca RCMP responded to the scene in Calling Lake, Alberta. Witnesses say Cardinal was drinking heavily and was mentally distraught. The report says Cardinal raised his rifle and an RCMP officer fired several times. He died on the scene. ACERT's report says the shooting was done in accordance to proper protocols and there was no wrongdoing by the officer. It's been almost 6 months since a mining disaster took place in north central Yukon. Now the First Nation is at the center of the incident, is looking into the Auditor General of Canada to help it hold governments accountable. Here's APTN's Sarah Connors with the details on that story.
The First Nation of Nacho-Nayakdun is calling on Auditor General Karen Hogan to look into Yukon government's handling of the Eagle Gold Mine incident. It also wants Hogan to investigate broader issues surrounding mineral management in the territory. Victoria Gold's Eagle Gold Mine is located on Nacho-Nayakdun's traditional territory near Mayo, Yukon. On June 24th, 4 million tons of cyanide-laced ore slid down a mountainside heap embankment. While the mine is now in receivership, cyanide continues to seep into the groundwater, which is now reaching nearby Haggard Creek. Nacho-Nayakdun says Haggard Creek is an essential habitat for many fish species, including critically sensitive Chinook salmon. Yukon government launched an independent review board to look into the technical causes of the heap leach failure in late August. But Nacho-Nayakdun says that's not good enough, and it wants a public inquiry to scrutinize the role the territorial government had in the incident. It's also asking Hogan to examine what it calls Yukon and Canada's failure to uphold the processes and promises of federal devolution. Nacho-Nayakdun says the territory has yet to develop new mineral legislation consistent with Indigenous rights and modern mineral management. The Auditor General's office says it's reviewing Nacho-Nayakdun's request and will respond when it completes its assessment. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, you can go to aptnnews.ca. And you can find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Last Friday, the gallery of a courtroom in Saskatoon erupted in anger as a judge stayed charges against a driver who killed a child. CTV's Laura Woodward has the story.
It was a tense courtroom as a judge ruled to stay the charge against a Saskatoon woman who hit and killed a 9-year-old child.
Bailey Maurice was going to school on September 9th, 2021, pushing her scooter at a crosswalk on 33rd Street West when she was hit by Kennedy's truck. At the crash scene, before police read out her rights, Kennedy told officers she vaped marijuana and microdosed magic mushrooms the day prior. Kennedy was charged with impaired driving exceeding the prescribed blood-drug concentration of THC causing death. The judge ruled Kennedy's case was not handled within a reasonable time, prompting some in the gallery to yell at the judge, calling her a racist. Additional sheriffs were brought in as people continued to shout and the judge rushed out the door.
We're obviously very happy with the judge's decision to stay the proceeding for unreasonable delay. We've been saying for some time now that the trial has taken too long.
Matters at Canadian provincial courts must reach a conclusion by 18 months. The judge ruled Kennedy's matter took about 24 months. Even if the judge didn't stay the charges because of timing, the defense believes the case would have been thrown out over how police handled the investigation.
This was a prosecution that was flawed from the get-go.
And while the Crown did not speak to journalists after the decision, the defense says it's expecting the prosecution to file an appeal.
This little girl deserves justice, and that's not what we got. The court system is filled with nothing but systematic racism, not only towards the Indigenous community, but towards other communities of color.
And I want to believe that justice does happen, but on days like this, it's really hard for me to say that I'm a lawyer and that I'm proud of it.
The girl's family says they're bracing for another tough Christmas without their loved one, leaving the courthouse, still searching for justice. Laura Woodward, CTV News, Saskatoon.
We have more stories for you after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. To Australia now, where a healing ceremony and day of commemoration was held in the Busking Palm Island for a much-loved community member on the 20th anniversary of his death. 36-year-old Cameron Dumadgi died in police custody. It's a tragedy that would thrust the secluded island into the headlines and put its people on a collision course with the Queensland authorities. NITV's Dan Rennie reports.
An island paradise, and home to one of the defining moments in Australian race relations. 20 years on, a pilgrimage to the place that took one of their own and changed their lives forever. A healing ceremony at the police station where 36-year-old Cameron Dumadgi died in custody with a powerful message of forgiveness.
You can't have healing and respect and love without forgiveness.
This ceremony with police and island authorities was unthinkable 2 decades ago.
And today, anger over an Aboriginal death in custody boiled over.
Cameron Dumadgi's death from severe injuries just 45 minutes after his arrest by Senior Sergeant Chris Hurley sparked the Palm Island riots. The police station was torched and riot police were sent in under a declared state of emergency.
I think the community were fed up. They were really fed up in terms of no one was listening.
Lex Watton was charged over the riot and spent years in court clearing his name. He regrets nothing, but says it's his time to move on.
It's important that we remember today and then move forward together in a more positive light.
It is about moving on together, but I'm not saying don't give up the fight for justice, don't give up the fight for truth-telling.
But many on the island say things have improved since those dark days.
It'll always be in the history books. But more importantly, I'm on about, and I'm very strong about, finding a better way forward for the next generation in our community.
The Palm Island Police have got a really good relationship with the community on this island. Things are a lot different back from 20 years ago.
Today's anniversary, a painful reminder of the loss of a young First Nations man in police custody 20 years ago today. And while 2 decades have passed, for the family, forgiveness, an important part of the journey to healing. I'm Bulgerman, Dan Rennie, NITV News.
Staying in Australia, 5 films featuring First Nation people and filmmakers have made the finals of the International Smartphone Flickfest, a festival held in Sydney this weekend which celebrates storytelling made on mobile phones. National Indigenous Television's Felicity Ogilvie reports.
Award-winning filmmaker Jenny Fraser is using a smartphone for her latest documentary. Filmed on Bundjalung country in northern New South Wales, local women share knowledge about plants.
Just dipped in a glass of water, you get this beautiful little sweet cordial drink.
I want others to know that there's women out there who can speak on behalf of women's places and speak on behalf of bush food, because that's women's business, and put the face to the name.
Jenny Fraser's film is one of 5 First Nations projects that have made the finals at this year's International Smartphone Flick Fest.
The filmmaking industry is kind of like the military. You know, you go out and shoot things and you have a hierarchy. But with our phones, we're showing our point of views from where we stand on country, and we don't have to answer to anybody else.
You're looking at this sea and little jellyfish are going through.
From matriarchs to youth. Another film that's made the finals is made by a cast and crew of students who have disabilities. They're using a silent film to tell the story of saving their school, Callaghan College, from a villain. Several First Nations students worked on the film, including the lead actress.
Deciding to make the film to everyone from around the world to see it.
The horror of social media is explored by another First Nations finalist, 15-year-old Sydney teenager Charlie Fletcher. In her film, the main character gets so obsessed by her phone that she is swallowed by her device and becomes part of social media.
I hope that people really see that there's a lot more behind just like endlessly scrolling. It's like you get addicted, you lose friends, like social life, like it's almost like you disappear sometimes. You're gone for hours scrolling.
The teenager is following her dream of becoming a professional filmmaker. Felicity Ogilvie, NITV News.
We now want to tell you about last week's web poll results. Last week we asked, do you feel the Assembly of First Nations is making a difference? More than half answered no with 56%, while the rest were almost split with 20% saying yes and the other 24% answering I don't know. Next we asked, should there be alternatives to swearing an oath to the King for new politicians? 64% answered yes, there should be an alternative. 26% said no, and 10% were unsure. And lastly, are financial pressures affecting your Christmas shopping? 63% of you are feeling the financial pinch, 25% were not feeling it, and 12% said they don't buy gifts. Thanks to all who took the time to answer, and check out aptnnews.ca for our latest website poll questions. One man in Winnipeg hopes to make the city a little safer with his music. That story when we come back. Starting on the east, St. John's 1, Charlottetown 0. Cartwright -1, La Grande River -4. Quebec City -5, St. Jovite -5 as well. -3 in Ottawa, North Bay 0. Sioux Lookout 0, Big Trout Lake -6. -18 in Churchill, Thompson -16. -1 in Gimli, Dauphin -5. -8 in Saskatoon, Yorkton -9. Stony Rapids -20, Meadow Lake -11. -21 in Fort Chipewyan, Peace River -28. 2 in Medicine Hat, Lethbridge -6. 1 in Penticton, Campbell River 5. -26 in Fort Nelson, Dease Lake -18. -34 in Old Crow and Sun, Mayo -19. Partly cloudy in Yellowknife at -20, Watee -21. Sax Harbor -22, Pawlatuck -24. -25 in Baker Lake, Chesterfield -26. And Iqaluit -9, Agulik -24. A Cree busker wants to make downtown Winnipeg a safer place, one song at a time. Reporter Sierra Bettens chats with Dwayne Davey about his campaign to revitalize the city's busking scene.
During the lunch rush, busker Dwayne Davey serenades Winnipeg's working crowd. This small skywalk between the downtown food court and Winnipeg's Millennium Library is his year-round stage.
I've gotten nothing but positive response from all the security,
paramedics, police, like you name it, all walks of life. Just hearing music in the morning, like it brightens their day.
His guitar gives him power. It helps him connect with passers-by.
That a lot of people are grieving. They're grieving from people lost to COVID, to opiates, drugs, and drinking. And I meet a lot of them here. Like, I call this guitar as like grief work.
It's also a de-escalation tool.
They walk into that corridor, they stop, they'll hear a song, they'll hear it, and they'll sit down, like sit there and just be quiet and listen to the music. When they leave that hall, they're not angry anymore.
Now, Davey and a team of musicians are campaigning to make busking a part of Winnipeg's downtown safety strategy. They've purchased a domain, winnipegbuskers.ca, to build a forum, and they hope to get the city and community organizations on board.
What we're hoping to is gather the singers, not only from Winnipeg, but in Manitoba. Like if you're up north and you're coming to the city and maybe you want to try out singing, like come down, sign up on our website. And what we want to do is primarily create some sort of association.
Davey, originally from Moose Factory, Ontario, says he's one of the few Indigenous buskers in Winnipeg. He estimates that 90% of downtown buskers are male.
And we were wondering, like, where's all the female singers? And apparently that they don't feel safe, like, singing downtown.
His plan, connect them with security buddies to make them feel safer.
We'd like to create a security system for them, like a buddy system, security system.
While he's become a fixture at the Skywalk, he dreams of having a dedicated space for musicians.
We could have our own artist area, because they have some for painters, but there's nothing really for singers. And there's a lot of lease spots available. Something we could look at.
With plans to launch the project in the new year, Davey hopes it will revitalize the scene while boosting safety downtown.
But we need native singers, we need non-native singers. We need to collaborate, and hopefully out of this website we can get something going in the new year, something positive, and bring this vibe back to Winnipeg, which used to exist here at one point.
Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Right on, Dwayne Davey. Love to see it. And that's your daytime newscast for this Monday, December 16th. We're back again for your evening newscast with more stories. Make sure to join us then. From everyone at our HQ in Winnipeg and from our reporting staff from across the country, hi miigwech, masicho, kwana. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.